what's up, everybody? Jeremy here, and guys, I'm very excited for the conversation we're going to have today because, we've looked at real estate a lot, but we haven't looked at it this way, and that's why I'm really excited because our guest today has a very different view on real estate, building wealth, and really going big. We have Cody Bjugan with us today. Cody, I'm stoked to chat, man.
Well, good job on the last name pronunciation. Very few people get that. So anyways, no, thanks for having me. It's absolutely my pleasure. I thoroughly enjoy having the opportunity to share, right? Make an impact. So let's do it.
So I'm interested to find out first and foremost, I want to get into how you got into real estate, and then I want to get into that very specific niche you're in within real estate because it is quite different. So how'd you get there, man?
There's a whole lot of things that led up to me starting my own business in 2002. I was 24. I had a partner for the first couple of years, but really what got me to that point is I would really have to go clear back to my senior year of high school. And so between my junior and senior years over the summer, I got my high school girlfriend pregnant. And so what happened is instead of going off to college and doing the college thing, I went to school of the hard knocks, reality check. And so right out of high school, I went into the trades. I actually went into the flooring union because after 3 months, you qualify for full health benefits for your family.
I'm a big proponent of that, by the way, because I don't think we do enough trades. There's so much you can learn in those. But anyway, continue.
Oh, there's huge, right? I mean, one of our visions as a family, as part of our legacy, is building a ranch for victims of child trafficking. And one of the things we want to accomplish on our ranches is the different career paths you can take that are great career paths that don't require a degree, whether that's entrepreneurship, but there is huge opportunity in the trades.
Yes.
And there's a huge need. It's a valued trades, it's valued skill set. And so we, as being in construction or land development or home building, I hope there's a shift there at some point, right? Because at one point, trades were looked at, they're kind of, I don't want to say frowned upon, but in some ways I'd say they have been. And so, okay, but back to the topic. So I went into the flooring union too.
Sorry about that. That's something I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. To qualify for health insurance, I got married 2 months out of high school, had my son, who's now 25, 3 months out of high school. I left the union after about 4 months.
Oh, wow.
But then I got into some other companies within the flooring industry, and I was young, I was hungry, I was a workaholic, therefore I had a lot of failures, right? Because I could go create all this success, by the way, I hate it when people say just because people make a lot of money, they're successful. That doesn't make you successful.
Yes. Yeah, you could be tied down to kind of, day-to-day operations, not seeing your family, working 100 hours a week.
Yeah, you could sacrifice your health, right? I remember a guy said to me one time, and please don't take this the wrong way, but I was probably 23 years old. It was actually my partner back when I first got going, self-employed, and he said, "Hey, Cody, I have zero desire to be extremely wealthy, but yet fat," is exactly how he said it, right? So it's it's taking care of your health. It's your life adventures. It's your wife. It's your kids. It's your friends. It's all this stuff, right? So anyways, I was doing well, making money, but sacrificing every other pillar of my life. Ended up running someone else's flooring company, floor interior design, counters, all that. But we were mainly new construction. And so a lot of these home builders, land developers were our clients. Mm-hmm. And so I just took an interest. And at 24, because I want to say this, making the decision to make that leap of faith and jumping off the cliff at 24 is probably a whole lot different than trying to make that same decision at my age today at 45, right? And so not knowing any better, I went for it and have been self-employed ever since in the land development space. So
I'm curious, we hear a lot about, home sales, real estate flipping, things like that, but we don't hear a lot about what you do with land development. And I'm curious for you, what drew you to that area of real estate versus the others? Because, the others are promoted, they're made to look sexy, but there's a lot of money in land development if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. The key is knowing what you're doing. But in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. We still make a lot of mistakes, right? But less than we did back then. But it wasn't that I was I've always had an interest in land. I'll just tell you, I'm a believer. I love Jesus. And one thing I know he's not making any more of is land. And so that was always an interesting component for me, even at a very young age. But really what drew me into the land development was more the home building, right? Because we were a sub on all this home building and just saw the opportunity and the interest. And quite frankly, there's a picture behind me right here. He passed away when I was in my teens. So unfortunately wasn't able to soak up a bunch of his wisdom and knowledge. But that was my grandfather. He was the largest kind of home builder up in the Northwest for many years. That's actually a picture of him, and that's his clock of being the president of the Home Builders Association. And so I think, I have that there specifically because I pulled inspiration from that, right?
Sure.
But ultimately, it was the home building that drew me in, and that's how we really started out. I mean, the first thing we kind of got into was just buying finished lots and just going vertical. But then quickly started pivoting into raw land. So
let me ask you this then. I'm curious, like, what that process looks like. Like, how do you know what's a good piece of land versus a bad piece of land? And I've been watching a lot of Yellowstone recently too. So like, I've been thinking like big land and stuff, but I'm curious, like, how do you know what a good lot is? Cause like I look at my home and we don't have a lot of land, but we have 5 acres. So it made my house extremely desirable to have a lot of land with it. And so I guess when you're looking at it, what makes land desirable? And then what things are you looking at?
Yeah. Good question. So not all land is the same. Let's just start there.
Yeah.
Right? Here's how we say what we do. We specialize in finding raw land, and majority of the time off market. So we cold call, direct mail, all that stuff. But we specialize in finding off market raw land that has development potential. The key is development potential. Like, if you want to make real money in real estate, you better figure out how to bring value to the transaction, right? Like I have this thing I say, it's the 4 keys to unlocking the magic. And what it is bring value to the seller, bring value to the buyer, bring value to the community or the jurisdiction, and bring value to the asset. You bring value to all 4 of those areas, and it's pretty phenomenal what can happen. But the problem is there's a lot of real estate models out there being taught right now. Like, dude, I mean, there's a house wholesaler on every street corner, right?
Yes.
There's probably 5 of them on every street corner. The problem is, the reason I don't love that business model at all is, and I have a lot of buddies that do it. And so, but 2 main things why I don't like it. One is, more than likely you've got to pick up that asset or tie that asset up below market value. So therefore, there's a good chance you're not bringing value to that seller, okay? You're not making a positive impact on one of my slogans, which is one legacy, right? We all have one legacy, and you're not making a positive impact, more than likely, on that one legacy. You might even be taking advantage of some desperation or motivation, okay? First thing I don't like about it. Second thing I don't like about it is a wholesaler brings absolutely no value to the asset at all, okay? So why could they lose money on some deals or break even or make a couple dollars, or on a really good one they make 5-10 grand? Why is it only that much? It's because they don't bring any value to the transaction. They don't bring any value to the asset.
It's commoditized.
Yeah. So the key is development potential, because we specialize in taking the raw land with development potential and taking it through the entitlement process or the governmental approval process and getting it approved for development. Us doing that, okay, brings tremendous value to the asset, okay? We also look at the jurisdictions as our partners, not as our enemies. So we bring value to them. We bring value to the seller because we pay them more than what their as-is market value is, okay? And we can get into that if we need to. My buyers love us. Most of our clients are publics, right? And they hate entitlements because they're no good at them. And why aren't they any good at them? Because to be good at entitlements, you got to be willing to think outside the box and be creative. And they're just not built that way. They're very rigid. I'm not blaming them. It's just not how they're built. And so then the question is, okay, and I've done lots of the actual land development where I do all the horizontal construction, put in all the utilities, the street lights, the streets, blah, blah, blah. And I've done lots of home building. But what I've really carved out as our niche and where we're comfortable calling ourselves an expert today is taking it through that approval process and then exiting. And what that allows you to do is it's a very highly leveraged model where your multiples on your capital are substantial and your risk is tremendously decreased, because in land development, and I know because I've done lots of it, the real capital and the real risk starts when you put a shovel in the ground. Okay? And so the model that we teach every day and that we do the majority of the time ourselves in our company is teaching you the entitlement process. So, and I'm being long-winded here, but I want to get to 5 points for you really quick. How do you know if it has development potential? Cody, how do I know? I have 5. One is we're big on density. So we're not going to get in and do big acreage lots, say like what you live on. We're all about, building, let's just say lots that are 3,000 square feet to, maybe 10,000 square feet, but it's all about packing in the density. That's how it becomes, the numbers get really exciting and the multiples are huge. But you need to understand zoning, okay? You need to understand utilities. You need to understand public access. You need to understand overlays, and you need to understand topography. Those are the 5 things I often talk a lot about. Obviously, there's much more than that, but those are the 5 things that you need to understand, get your arms around to even have a shot of being able to analyze if a property has development potential.
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack here, so I want to back it up just a little bit before we kind of get into all the unpacking here. But the first thing I'm curious to find out is, you talked about the lot size. I think that's really interesting, and I'm curious, when you're looking at finding like leads and lots for yourself, like, I guess, what is your system like for like looking for different land locations for yourself and knowing, okay, this is a good one, that's a good one? Like, I guess, what do you do in terms of like finding locations?
So like markets that we are entered
into? Like
yeah.
Obviously, like there's different places available all across the country. Like, this is going to be a good market for us. This is going to be like in New York State, probably not the best place to build right now because people are leaving the state. So I'm curious, like, when you're looking at areas.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not rocket science. I mean, go Google the top 20 growing markets in the country, right? Look at population growth. We look at it less on a percentage basis and more on an actual numbers basis, right? Because something might have this huge percentage, but it's a tiny city, right? Or whatever. But we're looking at population growth. We're looking at job growth. For us, because our average project is 100 to 500 lots today, that's what we do nationally all across the country. Let me throw something out there real quick.
Yeah.
If we go back to 2002, there's nothing wrong with doing 2, 3, 4 lot deals. Okay. I did plenty of them. But today, because of scale, we will only do projects that are usually 100 lots plus. But so we're looking at, okay, first of all, what type of clients can even take down a deal of that size? Well, for the most part, it's nationals. Somewhat large regionals can, but for the most part, it's nationals. So then we're looking at, okay, who's in that market, right? As far as my buyer, like who's my potential buyers? We're looking at, to be honest, we look at, well, I always try to be honest, but to be frank, we also look at politics, right? There's certain states, for the most part, we avoid. Because if I have the opportunity to pick my battles, right, there's some states or jurisdictions that it's just not worth it because there's so much other opportunity other places.
So you get kind of like tied up in red tape and you're like, I really don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, and luckily, I mean, I cut my teeth up in the Pacific Northwest. I used to be proud to say I was from Portland, Oregon. Now, not so much, but there's a lot of bureaucracy, red tape, hoops you got to jump through up there. I didn't know any better. That's what I did for 18 years, which now is to my benefit because some of these other areas we're in throughout the country, it's like a walk in the park. But still, the only reason I still do deals up in Oregon or Washington is just because I have a huge pipeline up there. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't even do deals there anymore.
So I'm curious then, like looking at that then, is there like a standard life cycle to a deal for you? Like how long you're kind of going to be in a deal before you're going to kind of locate it, find the buyer, move it? Like, because I'm sure like when you're looking at it, like you have a viability range, right? There's only so long you want to hold something before it's not viable for you anymore. What does that look like?
And luckily, one thing that's nice when we're looking at time value of money and whether the project's viable or not is understand that we don't close on the dirt until the development is approved. Okay? So my risk or my carry costs help us with our time value of money calculations and analyzing our risk and our returns and this, that, and the other. So, and people, I have to hit this topic just because it's so important. People say, well, okay, so how long is your timeline? From the time I tie up a piece to the time that I close on it is 12 to 18 months. Okay. Let's just say it's 15 months on average.
Sure.
Okay. Cody, how do you get a seller to wait 15 months to get paid? Normal real estate transactions close in 30 to 60 days. Well, let me tell you how. Okay. In my 21-year career, let's just throw out an example real quick. Let's just say I come across 20 acres, right? And I can do 100 lots on it. And as is value of that land sitting there as farmland or whatever it is, let's just use easy numbers. Let's just say it's 10 grand an acre. Okay. So it's as is worth 200 grand. All right. Well, I might make that seller an offer of 600 or $1 million or $1.5 million. It just depends. There's lots of variables. But in my 21-year career, when I go to a property owner and I say, hey, I can pay you 200 today and close now, or I can pay you $1 million and I'm going to close in 18 months, I will tell you I've never had a property owner say I'll take the 200 today, right? They're always willing to wait for the 3x, 5x, whatever it is, multiple. And so,
well, especially if they weren't on market either, since you guys are finding off.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, but what people got to understand is in the land development space, in the entitlement industry, if you come into our space and pay development values for land and you close it like a normal real estate transaction, you're taking a lot of unnecessary risk. And quite frankly, you're screwing our space up because guys like myself that have been in this space a long time, we don't do that. Okay. So don't come into this space uneducated, because those that did that between middle of 20 to middle of 22, when everything was just flying off the shelves and they closed on those deals, those guys are in the corner crying right now because they closed without approvals. In some cases, they aren't able to get it approved, right? Because they didn't know what they were doing. 2 is their basis is too high in the deal, right? So, because the thing I love talking about is there's a big difference between controlling real estate and owning real estate. Understand, as soon as you decide to take title, you lose most of your options. Okay? You can't renegotiate price. You can't renegotiate terms. You can't walk if you absolutely need to. So we're in the business of controlling real estate. That makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I guess from that perspective, how do you control it without owning it then?
Because you have it under contract. Right?
Okay.
So, right, we have a contractual relationship with the seller, right? And so we're going to pay them the $1 million instead of the 200 grand in that example I used earlier, but they got to allow us to go through the process to where we can pay that. I got this, I grew up in a small little town that got its first street signal when I was in high school. And so I'm a very much meat and potatoes guy, like very, I'll just say it to you this way, is that if I'm going to pay for a diamond, I got to make sure it's a diamond, and it's not a diamond until it's approved. Okay.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's how we get it done.
I can understand that. I grew up in a town that's 5/8 of a mile in size and doesn't have a grocery store, so I can totally understand your viewpoint, man. So I guess looking at that, then I'm curious, like, because the market's changed a lot. I know even the Fed's done many basis point raises this year. Like, how does that affect land as opposed to other markets?
Well, what it does is it creates scarcity in the marketplace, right? And so my buyers, especially publics, that every decision they make is based upon their stock price. It creates fear. It creates somewhat of a scarcity mindset. It causes people to want to sit on their hands. And so, but see, I went through the Great Recession and I missed a lot of opportunity in the Great Recession. It's markets like that where a lot of opportunities created. And I didn't know any better back then. And so today, going through what we've been through over the last, it's about a year now, is I've chose to, my word for like 23 is gather. I'm just gathering people and properties, right? While everybody else is sitting on their hands or running in fear, I'm trying to pick up amazing people for my team. I've hired talent in the last several months that I could have never touched a year ago.
Yes.
Right? And we're also able to pick up properties. But see, I'm definitely a visionary and I'm definitely an optimistic thinker. But you got to remember, like I could mention some names of guys that you would know every one of them who they are that are buddies of mine. And the problem right now is it's hard for them to pull their trigger because their model, they have to close right away. And they don't really know where rates are going to settle in at, where cap rates are going to settle in at. Anybody that says cap rates aren't tied to interest rates to me is just a joke. They absolutely are. And so, but they don't know how to perform on these deals because they don't know where things are going to settle in. Well, you got to remember, I don't close for 18 months. And I truly believe with all of my heart, you're going to see the housing shortage fully expose itself in a major, major way in 2024. And I'm counting on that, right? And I'm leaning into that. But at the end of the day, you know, third quarter or fourth quarter and first quarter were tough. We're tough. We've already seen optimism come back into the marketplace with our clients because they're starting to see their numbers tick up, which is actually happening quicker than I thought it was going to. Which is wonderful.
So let me ask you this then. When you're talking about numbers, like what numbers matter the most to you and what things are you kind of looking at the most for future prediction? Because you mentioned, you know, you're looking at it in 2024 and you're saying there's going to be a housing crisis. So I'm curious what things you're watching so that you have a best pulse on things.
So I'm not saying there's going to be a housing crisis in 24. Well, it depends on which way you're looking at it.
Sure.
I'm just saying the housing shortage is going to fully expose itself again in 24, which will be great for my business model. Okay. So, and here again, let's go back to that guy that grew up in that
and I
small
apologize for my ignorance in any areas that they're
No, it's good. 'Cause some people call it a crisis because there's going to be demand and a lack of inventory. So some people would see it as a crisis coming from the other direction.
Sure.
But you know, going back to that guy that grew up in a small little town, Damascus, Oregon, that meat and potatoes guy, here's what I said in about August of 22. Here's my prediction, okay? My prediction was that you will see rates continue to rise through second quarter of 23. Okay? They would then stop raising rates, and then it would take the last 6 months of the year for us as the public, as humans, to adapt to whatever the new normal is. See, because here's the thing, is that during COVID, I went from normally just looking for my wallet and my keys and my cell phone before I left the house to where I was grabbing an additional fourth item, which was a mask, okay? Because I had to adapt to what the new normal was, right? Us as the consumers of this country, we will adapt to what the new normal is. We just got to know what it is, right? In order to adapt. And so like, you know, oh gosh, I got to borrow money now at 6.5% instead of 3%, right? Well, guess what? 3% is not sustainable, right? If the only way you could afford that $600,000 house is if you could borrow the money at 3%, you shouldn't have been buying the home in the first place.
Well, I get my parents tell me about when they bought their home in the 80s and it was like 11%. So it's like, you know, it's a different world, man.
Yeah, and it wasn't too long ago. I was ecstatic to borrow money at 6-7%. I was ecstatic. Mark my words. Let's say rates settle in at 6.5%, 7%, whatever they settle in at. Mark my words. We will all adapt to it. And once we do, you're going to see that housing shortage fully be exposed. That's why we're betting on 24.
Yeah.
But we're already seeing, you know, the activity of our buyers, our publics, clients, you know, their activity on their sites are already increasing. Their home sales per month are already increasing because at the end of the day, it's all about absorption, right? So why don't I go and do a subdivision, say like you live in or whatever, that is 5-acre lots. And the thing is, my clients, those that build thousands and thousands of homes a year, they're not interested in going and building on 5-acre lots.
Sure.
Right? That's more of a custom, more of a local home builder. And I can't hit our goals or our vision, our mission, as far as how much we're looking to scale our business with that type of product. Now, I'm not discouraging anybody from taking my model and doing that type of product. I just can't meet our mission as a company by doing that.
Very cool. Well, Cody, I've really enjoyed this conversation, man. If people want to learn more about what you're doing and connect with you, man, how's going to be the best way for our listeners to do that?
Yeah, so we have a free ebook that specific audiences like your own, where we offer it to them. And so my team actually just sent me a link. So if they go to vestright.com/CYB, they can go there and download a playbook that we put together that goes much, much more in depth of our business model. And I can't guarantee this because I'd get in trouble with legal, but I would be absolutely amazed after going through that playbook if you don't know much, much more than you do today related to my business model and my space. So I strongly encourage you to go check it out.
Very cool. Well, Cody Bjugan, thanks so much for hanging out with me today, man.
Appreciate you having me.